Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's Tuesday. It's March 5th. It is 2024. We have 8 NBA games to talk about here on today's podcast, joined today by my buddy Timothy Buell. You all know him in the DFS streets as TastefulTides. Tim, what's happening, my friend?
Yeah, not much, Stevie. Thanks as always having me on the show. Yeah, we were just talking about a little bit of NASCAR. I didn't do very well, but I saw that I think you did pretty well. I think you did pretty well with the trucks too, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. Just overall good weekend on the right stuff, and it was one of those weekends where just everything kind of goes your way.
Yeah, apparently one of my drivers had a garbage bag fly into his front end and had beer cans all through it, so that slowed him down. I watched that and I was like, "How is this happening to me?" Of the 40 cars on the track, I've got the guy with the garbage bag on the front end. So yeah,
Gotta love it, right? Eight game NBA slate, very interesting slate. A lot of question marks. So, first look podcast, definitely going to be breaking down some of these situations, and it's a really interesting slate overall. We have some slow pace games, some fast pace games, some like middle type pace games, and I think there's only one total over 230. So yeah, a lot to talk about. Let's jump in, have some fun here. 8 games. What's up, YouTube? Hope you're all having a fantastic Monday night. I know I'm sweating Washington, Utah right now watching this game, so I'll probably get distracted a few times. if you're new, welcome. Orlando at Charlotte. This game has a 209 total. The Orlando Magic are an 8.5 point favorite on the road. Fultz is questionable for Orlando. Curry, Martin, and Williams out. Richards questionable for Charlotte. Let's start here with Orlando first. What do you like here for the Magic?
Well, I think we have to have some interest, right? I mean, Charlotte's 28th overall in defensive rating. They're just an absolutely atrocious defensive team. It's not necessarily like the best pace matchup, but still, like, we want to take advantage of the Charlotte defense. Other than Banchero, who's at 8,600, which I think is a fair price. I certainly would not consider that being overpriced. I think that's fair. But I think the rest of this Orlando team is kind of underpriced given how strong this matchup is. So if Fultz were to sit, I would have some interest in Jalen Suggs. I'd have some interest in Cole Anthony. And of course, I think we have to have interest in Wendell Carter Jr. at only 5,400.
Yeah, Wendell Carter Jr. is one of my favorite value plays on the slate, just overall. I think that he is just too cheap for this matchup. He's playing 30 minutes in close games, and he's playing 30 minutes when Paulo's out there. So I think Wendell Carter Jr. just too cheap for this matchup. I think this is a really good spot for him. So I like him a lot. I don't know how much like Fultz matters for me because like his minutes and are so spread out, and maybe you could potentially take some shots on like Anthony or Suggs, like you mentioned, but I don't trust it. It's an 8-game slate, and you want to trust that like scenario there. So we'll see, but I don't necessarily have a ton of interest. I have some interest in Franz. I think Franz is somebody that's underpriced that has some upside in this matchup. We've seen him do well in pace up spots this year. He put up 45 fantasy points the first time these two teams played. So he's kind of benefited from these pace up spots. And I think this is a spot he could definitely benefit from. So I like Franz. And then going to the Charlotte side, this Nick Richards situation is somewhat interesting because the Orlando Magic use a lot of big guys. If Nick Richards ends up sitting here, Williams is already out. We saw Bolden signed a 2-way contract on Saturday. I mean, I would assume he would have to play minutes here, him and like Poku and Thor, I guess, but they're going to need size in this game.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a mess to kind of break down currently as a first look pod. But yeah, I would agree with you. Bolden might draw the start, and even if he draws the start though, Stevie, I don't know if I want to play him. Like, how many minutes is he gonna play? Like there's other guys that can come in, after him, and they could end up chopping up the minutes. So it's like I get it. If you want to,
I don't think he starts.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I would assume they start Grant Williams.
Right. Okay. And he's a little bit priced up, but I mean, he is playing huge minutes. So I mean, he played 40 minutes last game and put up 44 DK points. So I mean, they're gonna need Grant Williams to play a ton, and he's still got power forward center eligibility. So I mean, Grant Williams might be the best play for Charlotte. I don't know if there's really anybody else because I'm worried that like if Richards is out, they're gonna just split up those center minutes, and I'm not gonna pay 8,300 for Bridges in this. This is a really tough matchup. So if I'm gonna play anybody, it's gonna be Grant Williams, and then maybe they start giving Davis Bertans a couple more minutes. That he played 26 minutes last game. So I mean, maybe if he gets up to that like those high 20 minutes at 4K, I think he'd be somewhat interesting as well.
Yeah, he played the last 14 minutes of that Toronto game, didn't check out after he checked in the third quarter, and scored 15 of his 25 fantasy points in the fourth quarter of that game. Bertans did. So I assume that he has 25-minute upside. I don't know how much more he really plays here. I think if Richards plays, it's less than that. So the only way I'm getting to like Grant Williams today is if Richards sits. And like you said, I don't really have a ton of interest outside of that because they're priced up. Orlando's a great defense. Isaac's back, so like they're even better defensively now. Wendell Carter Jr. is healthy. So yeah, I think I'm probably passing on Charlotte here. Yeah. New Orleans at Toronto, 229 total in this one. New Orleans is an 8.5-point favorite. Nobody on the injury report here for the Pelicans. Barnes and Podol out for Toronto. We'll talk about that situation in a second. Let's start here with Toronto, or not Toronto, New Orleans. Just kidding. Like anything for the Pelicans?
I think we have to. I mean, Toronto is like a completely different team that we were used to seeing in like earlier this season and in past years. Like they're an awful defensive team now. So streaming against them is a very profitable endeavor. And now they're going to be without Jakob Poeltl. They're going to be without Scotty Barnes. So I mean, this team is a real mess. Hopefully, maybe possibly they can keep it somewhat close because they're in Toronto. But I have quite a bit of interest in Zion. I've got quite a bit of interest in Ingram. You can obviously play McCollum, and you play J-Val. You could really play any of the starting five, in my opinion. I think you should be getting exposure to the Pelicans in some capacity on the slate, just because Toronto is in such bad shape, and they're going to be so. They're so bad defensively already, and they're going to be so thin without Poeltl and Barnes.
Yeah, I definitely worry about this game staying close. I know it's like an 8.5-point spread, but both of these games that we just talked about, 8.5-point favorites on the road. Yeah, it's saying a lot. I mean, so you're obviously a little bit concerned about that. And then for me on the New Orleans side, the Valanciunas situation is just so tilting that on an 8-game slate, it's so easy just to say I'm out. I wish Trey Murphy was like had a solid role with everybody healthy. His role is all over the place as well. So like I always lean towards Brandon Ingram. Like he's always the guy that I lean towards playing. And I mean, that's not really changing here. I think Ingram is the play. Let's go to the Toronto side. No Scotty Barnes. We're replacing 25% usage here on the season. A guy that's averaging almost 20 points per game. He's playing 35 plus minutes a night. We're replacing a huge piece here. Like this isn't, a random Seth Curry out type situation. This is like a main offensive piece here for Toronto missing this game. And we just saw them play Charlotte on, was it Sunday? And no Barnes in that game, but Podol played in that game. He got hurt. He didn't end up starting the second half in that game. Kelly Olynyk started the second half. And Kelly Olynyk, he played like these weird stints of like 5-6 minutes. And But he had almost 16 minutes in the second half. So now we're like, all right, are we projecting Kelly Olynyk to play starter 30-plus minute type minutes here? I would assume so. They do have Porter, who can kind of play big. What are your thoughts, like, initially here on this Toronto situation?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up Court IQ right now just to see, like, taking off Pirtle, Pascal, Barnes, OG, and Dennis Schroeder, just to make sure I'm.
Yeah, it's so, yeah.
Well, you have to
Of
though,
course.
right?
Yep.
So, and I even forgot to take off Achua. So, but anyway, I mean, it really looks like it's RJ Barrett is the guy that's going to benefit the most from this situation. He's still under 8K. I just kind of feel like Kelly O's too expensive. I mean, I agree with you that he's gonna have to play, like, I would say at least 29, 30 minutes. But I just don't. I think I'd rather get exposure to somebody like Barrett. And then I don't know. They priced up Gary Trent. He was a little bit cheaper. He's gonna have to play heavy minutes. So I think he's somewhat interesting just because he can get hot from three, and he's got a ceiling when it comes to, like, just real life points. So I think at 5,400 he's somewhat decent. Grady Dick at 4,500, he's gonna have. I mean, he played 24 minutes last game. I mean, that's pretty decent value for 4,500 shooting guard, small forward. It's kind of just the bigs, right? It's kind of like, who's going to play the minutes out of these bigs, and it's like Jordan Nwora only got 18 minutes. Like, he'd be interesting at 3,400 if he got up to like 25 minutes, let's say. Agbaji, he played 32 minutes. He started last game. I mean, 4,800
He'll
though.
start
That just
again.
seems,
He started for
yeah.
Barnes.
That just seems like too much though. 4,800 for him.
See, I don't think it's enough.
Really?
The thing you got to remember, or we have to remember, I think, in general with this spot is, like, Kelly Olynyk is not a rebounding big man. Like, he's not going to get up there and go get boards. So Ochibaji and RJ Barrett are both going to have rebounding upside, like bigger bumps in rebounding. Both of their rebounding rates, and it's a small sample size because we're looking at trade deadline plus here, they're both going up with Podol and Barnes out. So I think Barrett, who's already rebounding really well, we saw 9 rebounds from Agbaji the other night against Charlotte.
Yeah.
So I think Agbaji shot 20 times the other night. Like, he shot the ball 20 times. He shot 30%, but he scored 30 fantasy points. Did we see like a floor? That was like a floor game here. So does he come out in a blowout? I mean, you would assume that, like, him, Grady Dick, Nwora, Porter, Carton are the, like, garbage time players that play in a blowout situation if it does turn into that. So I like Agbaji a lot. He's someone that I definitely night before have circled to, see ownership and stuff tomorrow.
I was just gonna say this. I'll tell you one thing right now, that if he's chalky, there's no chance I'm playing him.
I think he's going to be popular.
Yeah.
The fact that, like, he shot that much and he played that many minutes, and, like, we know Toronto, right? We know that Toronto is going to play their guys. Like, now we're replacing, like, 2 main pieces here. Oh, and we didn't even mention that Bruce Brown's already ruled out for this game, because when I was looking at the injury report an hour or so ago, I just completely overlooked that, like, Bruce Brown's out for this game too. So, like, there's plenty of minutes here. I don't want to play Gary Trent. I understand why people play Gary Trent, and if Gary Trent is chalky, it's an easy fade for me. I'd much rather play Agbaji in that situation. All this to say that I think RJ Barrett is a phenomenal play today. I think this is an excellent spot for him. I think he has double upside. Hate the price. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. But I think he's definitely in play. I think Quickly's in play. Quickly's assists, they're not up yet on sportsbooks, but that is definitely one that I have circled. I think that this is a really good assist spot for him. Anything else you want to add to this one?
Nope.
All right, moving on. We got Philadelphia at Brooklyn. This game has a 219 total. Philadelphia 1.5 point favorite. Brooklyn on the back-to-back. Covington, Embiid, Melton out. Payne questionable for Philly. Let's start here with the Philly side. Any interest here in the 76ers?
I mean, a little bit just because Brooklyn is going to be on the second night of back-to-backs. Maybe a little bit of like Tobias, maybe. Tyrese Maxey, he's got point guard, shooting guard eligibility at under 9K. I think that's at least viable. Let's see who they start at the 5, right? I mean, they started Bamba last game. But I mean, really, I think it's just Maxey and Harris. I think you could sprinkle into tournaments. I think Buddy's got a little bit of upside at 6,100 also. Nothing about this game though really thrills me from a DFS perspective.
Really quick, not to go too much back here, but Quickly's assist prop is up. It's at 6.5. I just pounded the over. Pounded the over. So on the Hard Rock, which is what is available for me in Florida, it's minus 135. Pounded the over. Love the over for Quickly at 6.5. I think he's gone nine or more in 3 straight, and now Barnes is out. Like, yeah, love the over on 6.5 for Quickly. That line's gonna move. For me on the Philly side, I mean, I don't have a ton of interest in Philadelphia. I do want to point out, like, Kyle Lowry's minutes have been great, and he hasn't been scoring, and he has been still putting up really solid, like, fantasy outings. If he could hit some of these shots, like he went 1 for 9 the other night against Dallas and scored 28 fantasy points. The night before that against Charlotte, he shot 55% from the field, 5 for 9, and he put up 39 fantasy points. 39 fantasy points at 5,200 is fantastic. So I think the minutes and role that Kyle Lowry is playing right now is something to note. I like Lowry in this spot. I think this is a really good spot for Kyle Lowry. I think he's just too cheap still. And he's not like a sexy play, so I don't know if he'll get a ton of ownership here. So I like Kyle Lowry in this spot. Brooklyn, I hate playing Brooklyn on back-to-backs. I hate playing Brooklyn in general, but
I was just going to say, you could just say, I hate playing Brooklyn.
Yeah,
that's what I thought you said at first.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. They just lost to Memphis in a close game. I don't think anybody went off. I know Claxton had a solid game, but I don't think anybody had like ceiling game. Anything jumping off the page here for you for Brooklyn?
I was just going to say the only net that I ever really play is Nick Claxton. This is probably not the slate or the game necessarily that I want to roster him. Dennis Schroeder's probably getting too expensive now at 6K. He was fine when he was in the mid 5s. No, I mean, Brooklyn, there's really nobody for Brooklyn that I want to play. Do we know, is Ben Simmons already ruled out?
I know they rolled him out on the front end, but they're like questionable. It could be one of those situations they rolled him out on the front end and he'll play the second F. I don't think Cam Thomas is like weeks, right? So I don't think Cam Thomas plays.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we could play Ben Simmons.
I'm gonna pass. I really have no interest in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
The production and
I don't have a lot.
But like, how many minutes is Ben Simmons going to play? Like, he's been capped at like 15 minutes, and he's been out. Like, he's been out again for like a week. Like,
true.
Really come back and play 25 minutes. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I'm out.
I'm personally going to scratch that entire game off.
I like Kyle Lowry. I think Kyle Lowry is really solid.
Yeah.
Boston at Cleveland. 217.5 total here. Boston 6.5 point favorite. Brown and Porzingis questionable. And then the Cleveland side, LeVert, Okoro questionable. Mitchell and Strus out. We'll talk about that Cleveland situation in a second. Boston, no, but I mean, Brown and Porzingis both questionable. Matters a lot here. I mean, Porzingis has been banged up. I feel like Brown has continued to have like this like left knee issue, and I know he hasn't missed a lot or if any time here. If these guys sit, it's a huge bump for like Tatum, Drew, Derek White, Pritchard at 3,600. Like, I mean, I think I'd even like consider playing Al Horford because Cleveland plays somewhat big, and I mean, I think Tillman could get minutes off the bench in this one.
I'm
if
glad that you
Porzingis
brought up
sits.
I'm glad that you brought up Al Horford because I think this is a perfect game for him if those guys sit. 5,600.
Terrible matchup, but the minutes are there.
I mean, this is a terrible, terrible game, really. But I mean, if everyone's healthy, don't play it. But if Brown and Porzingis are both set, Derek White at 6,600, Al Horford at 5,600, Pritchard 36, like all become very, very solid plays. I think the biggest question really is: do you pay 9,700 for Tatum with no Brown, no Porzingis in probably like the worst possible matchup in basketball? Like I think on the road in Cleveland, is that too expensive?
I think it would come down to ownership because Porzingis and Brown have played both games this year against Cleveland, and Tatum played both games. He's averaging 51 fantasy points with those guys in the game. So if people are looking at this going, all right, it's a terrible spot. We're not arguing that. We're not arguing that like Cleveland's a slow-paced, good defensive team. Both of these teams are. The argument is like, when you take Brown and Porzingis off the floor, Tatum just sees a nice increase. And like, if he's going to be lower owned because it's a terrible matchup, this is the perfect like tournament spot. Do I think you're playing Tatum in cash games? First of all, who the heck's still playing cash games? And second of all, I think you're going to find better options just throughout the slate in cash games at this price point. So I think that if Brown and Porzingis sit, you're looking at Tatum in tournaments unless he's going to be like chalky. And then, I mean, I don't hate, the opportunity to fade him if he's chalky, but he goes from 1.37 fantasy points per minute to 1.48 with those two guys off the floor. Biggest usage bump is Derek White at 8%, Tatum's at 6.3%. So like those numbers are high enough where even in a tough matchup, I think we have to note it. Like Derek White is 1.33 fantasy points per minute with no Brown and Porzingis on the floor. I
still play cash games, Stevie. Just so you know.
I still play cash games in NASCAR, but not in basketball. Not in anything. I don't even play cash games in NFL anymore. Cleveland side, this situation is really murky, right? Like no Mitchell, no Strus, Okoro and LeVert questionable. Like we could see Garland play as many minutes as he can handle. Sam Merrill play as many minutes as he can handle. I don't even know who else would play minutes. Like, would it be Porter Jr.? Would it be Cooper? I mean, I know Cooper got recalled from the G League, but would they bring him up and play him 25 minutes in this game? I highly doubt it. Yeah, I mean, for me on the Cleveland side, it's tough. LeVert sits. I think you have to play Merrill, and you have to have interest in Garland, even in a tough spot.
This reminds me so much of the last game they were in against New York, and Garland was popping, Merrill was popping, Mobley was popping a little bit too in projections, and it was like such a slow-paced game. And I'm a little bit worried this is the same kind of situation going against, I think the best team in basketball. You're right though. The amount of minutes that like Garland's going to have to play, I think that's great. I'm hoping that we can get some better value, better point guards, in that mid range. That way I don't have to play Garland or Merrill. But and I get what you're saying for sure. This is just such an ugly, ugly game.
Merrill, he just chucks. So if LeVert sits, there's nobody taking shots away from Merrill. Like he's going to play 30 plus minutes in this game. If LeVert's out, Strus is already out, Mitchell's already out. Like if LeVert gets ruled out, Merrill's just going to chuck. I mean, and he shoots threes. So like he gets hot and hits like 4 or 5 threes in this game. You don't need much else after that. Like you just need him to, pick up some rebounds and assist and, score a couple. So like with Strus and these guys out, like Strus and Mitchell are already out. LeVert and Okoro is questionable. Like, he's already going to play minutes with no Mitchell and Strus. So now if like LeVert sits, if Okoro sits, like they're gonna need bodies.
And Okoro did play 34 minutes in that last game against
Yeah.
New York, so that's 34 minutes they got to find amongst that crew. I'm surprised at how high this total is, to be honest with you. It opened at 222 and now it's at 217 and
I
a
got
half.
bet down really fast. I saw
Real,
that too when I
yeah.
was
I would have bet that under 222 if I'd seen that. I was surprised it opened that high. But yeah. No, you're right. I mean, if they lose Okoro, I mean that's different than last game, and definitely they have to fill that void. They got to play minutes. The game should be relatively close. I mean, again, another one of these kind of like 6-7 point favorites on the road. The Celtics are. That just looks weird to me. Open at 5 and now it's 6.5. Yeah, that under really got steamed.
So let's talk just a scenario here. LeVert and Okoro both sit, right? They both sit.
Yep.
Let's just talk this one through really quick.
Yep.
Mobley, Allen, Garland, Murrow. We know those four.
Yeah.
Those four are going to play as many minutes as they can handle. Who's that fifth piece I think is really interesting for tournaments?
Niang, right?
Is it Nang? I would assume it's Nang or Bates or Wade. I mean, I was gonna say
they tend to start Wade a lot, which is weird. But so it might be Wade, and then bring Niang off as the sixth man, which would make Niang a great tournament play, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, as far as like trying to find that sixth man here that's going to get a lot of usage, because I think Cleveland is going to play their, if this is a close basketball game, Cleveland is going to play their starters as much as they can handle here. And it's trying to find that piece that like makes a difference.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Detroit at Miami, 220.5 here. Miami is a 12-point favorite. Grimes is doubtful for Detroit. Hero, Love, and Richardson already ruled out for Miami. Let's go Detroit first. Tough matchup. Any interest here in Detroit?
Not a ton. I do tend to like to roster Cade Cunningham every now and again. I think he has some relative consistency and he plays steady minutes. Other than the last game where he only played 23, but before that he was playing minutes in the mid to upper 30s. So at under 8K, yes, I know it's horrible matchup, but I think that he does potentially have 45 to 50 DK points in him. So, I mean, he put up 54 against the Knicks in New York. So, I mean, he can pay off this price tag pretty easily.
Yeah. I mean, if you're building a game script to this game to stay close, I think you're probably taking some shots on Cade.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think the game stays close. I mean, we just watched Orlando like beat up on Detroit, and their guys didn't play a ton of minutes in that game. I think I'm out on Detroit. Maybe, like I said, maybe Cade. And then on the Miami side, like, they have enough people out where I think it matters a little bit here. No Hero, no Richardson, no Kevin Love. Rozier, like, it's more of like trying to figure out like if I want to take shots on like Jaquez or Jovic, because I mean they're second unit type guys, and if the game is out of hand, maybe they play a couple extra minutes here. Maybe I'm overthinking it. What are your thoughts on Miami?
I think Bam's price looks really good at 8,400.
If the game stays close,
I was just gonna say that. Like,
yeah.
Like, what do you do if like I don't know if like Jaime Jaquez is really like a true mop up guy. Like, I think the mop up duty would go to Jovic, Highsmith, Wright. Like, those would be like the true mop up guys. I don't think Jaime Jaquez is a mop up player right now. So, but the other side of that is he's only 5K. So he could do his damage pretty easily and then not even play his last run and pay off 5K pretty easily. So I think I have interest in him. But other than that, like, I really like that price on Bam, but the game has to stay close, and they're 12-point favorites at home. So I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Yeah, they started Jovic against Utah the other night, and when he like played a decent role, but Caleb Martin like finished both halves of that game. So maybe Jovic checks back in if the game's not that close and gets 24 minutes here. I think he's my like tournament play from this game. I think the more I think about it, the more I like him for like large field tournament stuff. If he grabs 25 minutes in this game, he probably crushes. Detroit. I mean, he's gonna get some rebounds, points, and assists when he's out there anyway. And if he does start again for Hero, then it's hard not to see him score 15 to 18 fantasy points. If he gets a little bit extra run here, maybe we're looking at like 25 to 30. And he's shown upside before. He's gone for 40 plus fantasy points when he played 30 minutes. And that was a unique situation. Don't get me wrong. But it also shows us that like the possibility is there, especially in a matchup against Detroit. Atlanta at New York, 217 total in this one. The Knicks, a 4-point favorite. Okongwu and Young out still for Atlanta. OG, Randall, Mitch Rob still out. And then Brunson is questionable. Let's go to Atlanta first. What do you like here for the Hawks?
I'm looking at if Capella's playing any more minutes. He's still right around 24, which is kind of disappointing. I have some interest in Capella, but I don't think I can really do it. I think Murray's too expensive for this matchup, so I'm out on him. I think DeAndre Hunter, I think, is at least a little bit interesting at 5,100. He's at least getting a full allotment of minutes, like right around 29. So I think he's interesting at 51. I don't know though. Like nobody really sticks out to me.
Yeah, I was kind of like when I was looking at this game before the slate, I kind of felt the same way. DeAndre Hunter shoots more and scores more when Trae Young's off the floor. His price is kind of reflecting that now. DeJounte obviously I think still has the highest ceiling, but like 9,400, you need him to go for like 55 plus, which he can. So I like DeJounte Murray in this game more if Brunson sits. I think that's where like I think that's a better matchup for him, and I think the game stays closer overall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling. Maybe projections puts me on something for Atlanta, but right now I'm struggling to have a ton of interest here. On the Knicks side, Josh Hart is playing at an insane level. We've been talking about this for a while now, and like we just witnessed like just an absolutely insane game from him against Cleveland the other night. He had 19 rebounds, 10 assists, and what do you have, like 10 or 12, 13, 14 points, something like that. Like Josh Hart had a triple-double the other night, and the ceiling is just so massive. What are your thoughts here on Josh Hart and the Knicks?
I mean, it simply comes down to Brunson, right? If Brunson sits, I think you can play Josh Hart. I think you can play Dante DiVincenzo. I think you can play Miles McBride, who played, I think, 46 straight minutes. He never came off the court where he came in for Brunson. So Miles McBride at 5,500 going to play, let's say, 40 minutes against Atlanta. He can easily smash $5,500 price tag. So I think there's at least 3 Knicks that you could really, get overweight on and play all 3 of them in the same lineup in this amazing matchup. But honestly, if Brunson sits, I might play like a min 2 Knicks rule, just because the rest of the slate is so slow paced and so pretty ugly. So I want to get exposure to all those minutes against Atlanta if Brunson's out.
Yeah, so for me on the Knicks, if Brunson sits, Hart and DiVincenzo, core plays for me. Both of them. Playing them together, no issues with it. Both of those guys would be core plays for me. I'd have a ton of interest in McBride, like you mentioned. I mean, he would probably play 40 plus minutes here if we get news that Brunson sits. So Brunson matters a lot. Like you said, he left the game minute into the game the other night. So, and like that was a tough matchup against Cleveland. Now we're getting Atlanta.
Yes.
This is a much better matchup. So
that's what I'm saying. I think you could min 2 Knicks.
Yeah, but I only want to play, I think, 3 of these guys. I think it's Hart, DiVincenzo, and McBride. Those would be the guys I think I'd play. Like, Precious's minutes have kind of been all over the place here recently, and Josh Hart is just crushing. Hartenstein's minutes all over the place. He's 5,900 still. Bogdanovich can score, but that's really all he kind of does. So, I mean, he potentially would be in play, but
I think you can play Bogdanovich. I agree with you about Precious, but I think you can play Bogdanovich.
Yeah, I just don't know if he has the ceiling for $6K price tag on an 8-game slate, but I don't think he's a terrible play. You just need him to have a really good shooting night. All right, that game's great. We like that game. For 217 total, that game's good.
Do you think you can play Capella? Not to backtrack, but
no.
Just because Wendell Carter is a way better play at the same price point.
Well, I mean, you just think that like Capella would be playing more with Noah Kongwu, and he's just not.
He's right.
I mean, they've been playing Fernando. They've been going small with Hunter. I don't think the Knicks are going to mind going small in this game, right? I mean, if they don't have to play Hartenstein a ton of minutes in this game, I think they would actually prefer that.
Well, I really want to play Capella. I feel like this would be a really good matchup for him, but they just never play him. They don't play him.
Yeah, well, who knows?
I know.
San Antonio at Houston, 229 total here. Houston 8-point favorite. Bassey out. Wemby questionable. Houston side, Adams and Eason. I don't even know why I say those two. They're out for the season. Let's go San Antonio first. Wemby matters a ton. Obviously, like his usage is massive and his production is massive. If he plays, I have interest in him and nobody else probably. I mean, maybe a little bit of Vassell. If Wemby sits, what are we doing with San Antonio?
Get to all the Vassell. He's a very, very, very talented player. I don't really care that he's 7,600. He could absolutely smash that price tag. So I wouldn't mind getting to some Sohan either. I think Keldon maybe if Wemby sits possibly at 5,200. I mean, there's so much like shots and usage that are going to be gone with Wemby out. So you have to get to like at least one of these guys. But man, how's this guy not 11K yet? Like, what more does he have to do to get to 11,000? Like, he's still way, way, way too low priced on DraftKings.
Yeah, just a quadruple double upside player.
Yes.
Yeah, if he plays, he's a great play. It's shoulder soreness, I think, is what I read for him. So we'll see if he plays or not. I'll say this. Yeezy nailed it in chat. He said, I hate rostering Spurs. If Wemby sits in this game and the Spurs are chalky, I might fade them. Like, just straight up, not even be underweight on them. I might just fade them. Nobody sees a huge increase in anything with Wemby off the floor. Keldon's at 1.05. It's actually a decrease. Zach Collins is probably the guy that stands out the most to me here. If you think that, like, if Wemby's out and Zach Collins plays 30 minutes, he's the guy that I think stands out the most, but I don't know if we can really trust that.
If Zach Collins starts, I would gladly play him.
Yeah, if Wemby's out and Zach Collins starts, I'm in. But everybody else, I think I'm out. Like, even Vassell.
Even Vassell?
Wow. And, like, I know the risk, but, like, if he's going to be... All right, Wemby sits. Vassell over under 30% ownership. I think over. So, like, too many roads for him to fail for me.
I disagree, but that's okay.
We can't agree on everything, Tim. The show would be boring.
I know.
Vassell's been playing great. But how much of that is playing with one of the best young players in the NBA? I mean, like his numbers aren't. He's averaging 1.08 fantasy points per minute. So he scores 40 fantasy points here with no Wemby. I can beat 40 fantasy points at 7,600. That's all I'm saying.
It's a pretty ugly slate, though.
We got a game coming up right after this that is just stacked. Just stacked.
I wasn't gonna bring it up.
Yeah, just stacked. So I mean, I hate playing the Spurs. I love playing Wemby. Hate playing the Spurs. Vassell is the other guy that I like to play. If Zach Collins starts, I'm in. But I mean, this might be a spot. It's just a great leverage spot. I feel like could easily blow up in my face. Houston side, it's a great matchup for Fred VanVleet. 7,300 is a great price tag for him. I think he's in play with or without Wemby here. I think Jalen Green, when he's getting hot like this and he's shooting well, his ceiling is massive. He's shooting a ton right now. So I definitely have some interest in the Houston side of this game. Kind of why I want Wemby to play. This game's super stackable if Wemby plays.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and of course, I mean, FEV at 7,300, I think is still way too cheap. So, yeah, he would probably be my favorite play. Then Şengün at 8,200, probably be my second. And then Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, both great plays. You're going to want to get exposure to Houston regardless if Wemby plays or not, just because the Spurs are so bad defensively. So you should be getting to at least one of these guys, one of these, starting five players.
All right, we finished it out. Indiana at Dallas, 246.5 total. Dallas a 4.5-point favorite. McDermott out. Nesmith questionable for the Pacers. Dallas side, Luka questionable. Derek Jones Jr. questionable. And my boy, Maxi Kleber, questionable. Let's go Pacers first. I mean, anytime Nesmith sits, I have interest in Mathurin. I think Mathurin is just a stellar play with no Nesmith. I think this is a really good spot for Halliburton. When we're looking at just like pure ceiling and game, this game has so much ceiling. I know he hasn't had like the ceiling games recently, but I mean, this is also a guy that we were paying $10K for 2 months ago. His ceiling's massive. The minutes are back. I think Halliburton is in a fantastic spot to have a ceiling game.
Yeah, I mean, he went for 33 fantasy points in his last game in 36 minutes, and he shot 4 of 16. Shot 25%, 0 for 6 from 3. Like, he's back. He's just waiting. He just hasn't found it yet. So Dallas is a bottom 10 defensive team. This is an amazing spot for Halliburton. I think this is going to be a real, buy low spot on Halliburton, because I think there are other great guard options on the slate, and I think people are losing patience with Halliburton. So I think he makes for a fantastic play. The total in this game is like 18 points higher than any other game on the slate. So you're going to be wanting to get exposure to Indiana. If you can't afford Halliburton because you want to play Luka, if he plays, you can go down to a Miles Turner or a Mathurin. We saw TJ McConnell absolutely smash in 26 minutes last game. So I mean, he did shoot 13 from 15, but he still crushed in 26 minutes. So I mean, I definitely I really love this game. I think the field will too, though.
All right, I'm just gonna say it, Tim. TJ McConnell had an outlier game.
Well, yeah.
Listen, shooting 86% from the field, not shooting any threes. Have yourself a night, TJ McConnell. No free throws. Scored 26 points on 13 jump shots and layups. Dallas side, Luka out. Kyrie's the best player on the slate. I mean, I'm not overthinking that at all. If Luka plays, he's a stellar play. I still like Kyrie a little bit in that scenario. PJ Washington's minutes are really interesting. He's played at least 35 minutes now in 3 of the last 4 games. I think that is something to kind of note. Gafford's minutes are just gone with Lively healthy. And Lively's not even playing a ton of minutes either, because they're just they really like PJ Washington. And I think that's one of the reasons they went out and got him. Talk to me here about Dallas.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If Luka sits, you're 100% playing Kyrie. I do like that PJ Washington call. I think the most important thing, though, is that I'm looking at is who you prioritizing, Wemby or Luka, if Luka plays, right? You can't play both. You have $4,500 left if you play both. So as of right now, it's pretty much impossible to play both. And I don't know. I don't know who I'd prioritize right now in a tournament build. I kind of think you prioritize Wemby.
I think you have to build out some lineups, right? And I
Yeah.
don't mess around building lineups the night before. It's a waste of time. Like baseball, I'll build a lineup as we're doing the show, and I'll always enter it in a tournament. And football, I do the same. But basketball, so much changes. Like 95% of the time, you build a lineup the night before. It's not going to be very relevant when the slate comes around. That's why we make sure we say it's First Look Podcast all the time. As of right now, looking at like pricing and what you're going to potentially get, I would assume I would prioritize Wemby over Luka. But you know what they say about assumptions. So I think the ultimate scenario is Luka takes a day off and you could play Wemby and Kyrie together. That would be the ultimate scenario.
That would make things very, very easy and very, very chalky.
There's always ways. There's always ways in NBA DFS to play chalky guys with low-owned players with them. I mean, yeah, depending on the slate, I think you're giving up a lot trying to play Luka and Wemby together. What, $4,500 a player? They're not most nights they're not going to score enough combined where you're going to do it. But I mean, they do have that upside of scoring like 200 combined points.
Right.
Any final thoughts here on the Dallas side?
No, I'm just kind of like looking at like Luka, Kyrie, PJ Washington. That would really be it for me.
All right, let's play the morning grind game, and then we're gonna get out of here so I can go watch Kyle Kuzma hopefully score some more points. That's what we like, right? Favorite play under 5K to go 7X. Who do you got?
I'm gonna go Grady Dick.
All right, this is worried you're gonna take my guy. I really like Abaji today. I think this is a fantastic spot for him. 20 shot attempts the other night. 20. 2-0. 20. So, I mean, Barnes is out again. Podol's out now, too. Abaji plays 30-plus minutes, and hopefully he chucks. We want usage.
I should have gone Merrill, but I'll leave it.
I like Merrill, too.
Yeah.
Over 8K to go under 5X. Who is your bust today?
I'm going to go with Tatum.
Ooh. So that could be really risky. Really risky. This question is always hard. Right now, I'm leaning Maxey, and it's more of just I don't love that game overall, and I think that we're going to be playing other people in better spots just in general on this slate. So Maxey is my guy today. Favorite 6X play?
I'll go with FEV.
Took my guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It doesn't always like there's some questions that it happens on. It rarely happens on favorite 6X plays. All right, that one threw me for a loop. Oh, I knew who I'm going to pick. Give me Wendell Carter Jr. here at 5,400. I think he's a stellar point per dollar play today. Let's get weird GPP play of the day. Who do you got?
Is Gary Trent weird enough?
I mean, if you want to play him, sure. Oh God,
I want to play him.
Playing that guy.
I want to play him.
All right. Well, best of luck to you. Sorry. Yeah, I can't help myself. Hey, it works out. I'm going to go Therese Halliburton. He hasn't had like ceiling games lately. He's expensive. We've already talked about like all the scenarios of wanting to play Wemby and these guys, Luka, Kyrie. I think Halliburton is just going to go overlooked on this slate. I love this spot ceiling wise. I think this is my let's get weird. And it's not even weird as far as like who I'm talking about. It's just more of like, I think he's going to be lower owned than he should be. All right, betting portion of the morning grind game. Any player props or pick 'em plays that you like here?
I am going to bet the under in that Celtics Cavs game, even though it's already been steamed. Did not get a chance to look at props during the show, but I am going to bet the under in the Celtics game.
All right, I like it. I'm going to go to my boy Paolo Banchero over 20.5 points here. I gave out the other one that I really like as well when we were talking about that game. It was quickly over 6.5 assists, but Paolo over 20.5 points. He's hit this in 4 of his last 6 games. This is an excellent spot here against Charlotte. Scored 23 points against them earlier this year. Came back from missing a couple games and put up 29 points in both of those 2 games since returning. I have no issues with like his minutes or production. I think Paolo 20.5 just seems a little low for me for a guy averaging 23 points a game against, and then playing Charlotte. So like Paolo Banchero a lot for over 20.5. And then I actually like a line today. I like Philadelphia -1. Ooh. I think Philly beats Brooklyn in this game. I think they beat them. Like, if you want the money line and you don't even want the point, go for it. I think Brooklyn on the back-to-back, they're going to have some tired legs. Like, when I was looking up this bet, Brooklyn played Finney Smith 37 minutes, Cam Johnson 37 minutes, Bridges 39 minutes, Schroeder 37 minutes, and Claxton 33 minutes. These guys are world-class athletes, and I get that. You're still going to have a little fatigue, and I think that Philly is playing a lot better finally. Like, they're starting to finally click here without Embiid. They just beat Dallas. They beat Charlotte. They had a couple of tough games before that. They beat Cleveland recently. I think Philly beats Brooklyn in Brooklyn with Brooklyn on a back-to-back. So I like Philly -1 in this spot. Tim, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I like that bet. I'm gonna tail you on that one.
To be fair, I don't ever just take a point. I took the money line bet because I feel like a point is worth Anyway, so
no,
I took Philly minus or money line, but yeah. That's it. We're done. Tuesday's in the books. Appreciate everyone over there on YouTube hanging out with us live. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. We're getting close. We're like 25, 26 subscribers away. Send it to your friends at work. Help us out. That'll wrap it up. Hope everyone has a fantastic Tuesday. Back tomorrow talking hoops. Good luck, everyone. We'll see you then.